Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. On this episode of the OGS Ohio Roots podcast, we're talking about genealogy for the next generation with author Dale R. Spaulding. He, along with his wife Nancy, created the books Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions and My Family History Journal, a creative and engaging way to help children discover their family stories. We'll explore how curiosity, conversation, and storytelling can turn family history into an adventure kids actually want to join. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dale Spaulding. Dale Spaulding, thank you so much for joining me today on the OGS Ohio Roots podcast to discuss Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions. I'll start with what I ask all of my guests. What got you interested in genealogy in the first place?
Well, going back years ago, growing up, my parents didn't really tell me anything about our family history. I knew my grandparents, but that's it. I didn't know anything past that. My grandparents never told me about their parents, so I never asked, so part of it's on me,
Sure.
right? But when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I think, when the Roots miniseries came out,
Okay.
and I saw that, and that is what sort of sparked my interest. But by the time, I didn't get involved right away, but by the time I started getting an interest in that, my dad and my grandparents had already passed away. So I basically started from scratch. But I think that Roots miniseries really got me thinking about my past and just the desire to find out about it.
Sure. I imagine Roots had an influence on a lot of people at that era.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So what inspired you to create Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions? Is there a real Kathy somewhere?
Oh, well, no, but my grandkids, I have 5 grandkids. The youngest is 1, and the oldest is 14.
Okay.
And since I learned so much about family history and research over 30 some years, I just really wanted to share with them what I learned. But I didn't want to wait until they were all teenagers before they could appreciate it.
Sure.
So I just started kind of telling them stories and letting them ask questions and sort of at a young age. The two really interested now is a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the book's only been out for a couple of months, okay? So it's new, and the journal only out for a few weeks. So they've just been really reading the book a lot. So now, is there an actual Curious Kathy? No, because I didn't want to pick one of my 5 grandkids because then what would the others be all jealous?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I just kind of find a neutral character, and that's why my wife and I came up with her. So, yeah.
I think I can understand the answer to this question now, but I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah.
What made you choose a conversation between a grandchild and a grandparent as kind of the framework?
Right. Well, the obvious answer is me. My wife and I as grandparents and our kids, and trying to communicate. Because, I missed out on that in life. I missed out on knowing my family history, and I don't want my grandkids to do that. So, and again, I studied it a long time. Actually, I wrote another book here, showing it to you right now, Fortitude. And it's a kind of reads like a history book, but it covers 400 years of history. But what's unique about it is the characters in the history book are all my ancestors.
Okay.
So, and I didn't want to wait until they're teenagers to start telling them this. So I wanted to do something that could relate to their level. And, and I'm in a genealogy club here in where I live in North Texas. And everybody has the same issues. How do you communicate to kids? How do you spark an interest in family history at a young age? And so I just thought of the idea, and why not write something at their level? And I didn't really see a lot out there like that. And so I started to brainstorm some ideas, and here 2 months ago, it was published. So.
Given your experience with your own grandchildren, what do you think most children are most curious about when they think about their family's past or when it's
Right.
presented to them?
Right. That's a good question. So you got to think at their level, facts and data don't mean anything to them. They
Right,
could care
right.
less that this person was born in 1861. They don't care about any of that. So you just kind of relating things to their level. They want to know, like one of the questions in Kathy's curious questions, quirky questions, is or people go to the grocery store like because she was hungry and she was thinking about food. Do they go to the
Hmm.
grocery store, get their groceries like we do down at Walmart?
Hmm.
No, honey, they didn't. They were farmers back then. And so you get to tell a story about what life was like. So I think for the kids, it's how can they relate it to things on their level? What did they do? What activities were they involved in? What did they eat? What did they wear? How did they learn? Did they go to school? And so just kind of keeping things at their level and staying away so much from facts and data on a genealogy family tree kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned the age ranges of your grandchildren. Was there a target age range you were looking for when you wrote the book?
Yeah. I sort of the 4 to 10-year-old range, not the teenagers because they can, read other things at that
Hmm.
point. So Kathy herself in the book, we're thinking she's like about 6 years old, but anywhere, maybe even 3, because my one of my grandkids just turned 4, and he's been interested in this stuff for a little while. So I'd get say maybe 3 or 4 to 10, that kind of age range.
We as adults and parents and grandparents sometimes kind of struggle to explain our family history to our children because
Yeah,
we don't know much of it sometimes.
right,
How do you think this book is going to help people, whether that's parents or grandparents, do that differently or approach it differently?
right, right. Well, I think that as they read the book, because it's sort of a walk through history, because it has early moments of the colonial times with farming, and then character from the American Revolution, and then in the Civil War. So if you just take moments of history like that, like if you can trace an ancestor back to that period of history, then you can talk about what it was like back then, and let them ask questions, because that's what they do. You got to can't just tell them. You have
Mhm.
to let them ask questions, right? They after if you're just going to talk, eventually they're checked out and they're somewhere else. But you got to engage them and let them ask questions, and I think that's the best way to do it. But sort of relate it to an ancestor in that moment of time. So if they're learning about a period of history in school, connect them to that period of history with one of your ancestors that you know about.
Mhm.
Do that, but let them ask questions. That's the thing. My goodness, why is the biggest question I get from my 4-year-old and 6-year-old. I mean, I could do anything. Hey, you want to go play outside? Why? Well, because it's fun, but they always want to know why. So let them ask questions, and stop talking so much and trying to push information down to them. Let them ask.
You talk about storytelling, kind of makes it more meaningful for young readers. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've used that in your own experience with your grandchildren?
Yeah, just that. They come over, and we're doing a sleepover next week. They live about 30 minutes away, and I just like to tell them stories, and they love stories. Oh my gosh, do they love stories? They ask me, tell me a story, and they love to read books and all that, and over and over and over again. So storytelling is. I mean, that was the way history was passed on, right? A long time ago, right? Before
Right.
written language. So I think that's part of who we are as human beings, our DNA. We love stories. And
So you
so,
don't just bring out the big family tree chart and show them.
no. I don't think I've even showed them that. I'll show them a picture
Yeah.
and say, "This is your fourth great grandfather." I'll do that, but no, I've never even show them the family tree chart at all.
Now, there's kind of a companion piece to Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions, which is a My
Right,
Family History Journal, and I
right.
know it encourages kids to draw and write and add
Mhm.
photos and things like that.
Right.
Why did you feel that was an important component to add?
Yeah, well, I got to give my wife credit for that. Okay, so
Smart man.
you're right. My wife was a career elementary school teacher. She taught kindergarten and first grade for her whole career. So, and she was fantastic at teaching kids how to write. I mean, even before they could even spell. I mean, as soon as they could start writing the letters, she would have them write. And so that was an important part, is to add that component, because I've always been of the opinion that you never really have clarity. You never really understand something until you get it out of your head and down on paper.
Hmm.
And so that process really helps kids to learn. So that's why we wanted to add that, so they can actually participate and learn by actually crafting themselves, and through interviews, or however they learn, through my conversation with them, getting information out of their heads down on paper, so they can really grasp it with clarity.
Hi, everyone. Noel Poirier here, Executive Director of the Ohio Genealogical Society and your host for the Ohio Roots podcast. Did you know you can help preserve the past and empower the future? Your donation to the Ohio Genealogical Society helps protect vital family history records and supports research for generations to come. Visit www.ogs.org/donate and give today. Thank you so much for your support. Get ready for the 2025 OGS Annual Conference, coming to Sharonville, Ohio, April 29th through May 2nd, 2026. Join genealogists and family historians from across the country for 4 days of inspiring sessions, expert speakers, research tools, and community connections. Don't miss your chance to discover new stories and strengthen your family history skills. Registration opens November 28th, so be sure to register and be part of Ohio's premier genealogy event. Do you see the two books together working as kind of a starter kit for families to kind of get together and work on their family history together?
I'd love that. Yeah, that was why we did it. Really, one, we didn't see a lot of information out there like this, but two is that I have a passion for this now, because I never learned any of this growing up. So I've always wanted to spark an interest, since I've had the grandkids in that. So yes, we're hoping that that others will pick up on this and use those together, learn the stories, connect the people in the story to your story, and then let the kids then get that down on paper. Because wouldn't it be fantastic? I mean, think about it. A 5-year-old fills out that journal and then puts it away in a box someplace. And that 5-year-old is now a 60-year-old someday, and could pull that out and have that document that they created when they were 5, and to be able to share that with their grandkids. That just really excites me to think of that possibility for some historical kind of document like that journal.
You mentioned, I've and what I've read about the book online, because I haven't seen the book yet, I haven't gotten a copy yet at the library. But how do you think homeschoolers in particular are a natural audience for resources like this?
Right. Yeah. So what's great about homeschooling, I didn't know a lot about it, because my wife was a public school teacher for 25 years. But our youngest son and his wife, they homeschool their kids, and their ages are 1, 4, and 6. So they're just getting started with that. But what I've seen them do, and what I think the connection is with homeschoolers, is they have a lot of flexibility to tailor what they're doing, and if they're learning a subject, so they can bring in the family history in that tailoring. For example, if they're learning about geography, they're learning about the Northeast, New England, well, then find an ancestor that you might have had that lived in New England, bring that ancestor into the story as they're learning about geography. If they're learning, and certainly writing in their creative writing, let them write about an ancestor. If they're learning about photography, bring out some of these old pictures that need to be cleaned up and maybe colorized, and to teach the kids how to do things like that. So whatever you're learning in school, and if you're homeschooling, try to as much as possible, bring in the family history into that component, and let the kids actually, learn that along the way.
For families just kind of beginning genealogy, what's a step you'd recommend for them? Thinking about the book in general.
Okay. Well, first outside the book, something that I always regretted never doing since I just picked up on this later in life is step one, find people. Who's the oldest people in your family? Do you have grandparents still alive? Maybe not. Maybe an aunt or an uncle. Find the oldest people in your family and make it a priority to sit down with them and interview them. Turn the recording device on, ask them questions, and get as much as you can from them before you lose that living link of history. I know that's outside the book, but I just regret so much that my father and grandfather, all that I've learned, tracing my family history back to the 1500s, all the stories I've learned, they don't know any of that. I never was able to learn to share that. So just kind of toss that out. But relating to the book is, yeah, just read that with the kids and maybe take some action items along the way. Oh, this is very interesting about the American Revolution. I wonder if anybody in our family served in that. And then go on a journey back to see if you can find someone. So maybe the book will spark interest in different moments of history that you can make a connection to with your children or grandchildren.
How do you think a project like this, whether it's reading the book and filling out the family history journal, how do you think that's going to affect children in the way they understand their lives as part of kind of an ongoing family story and timeline?
Right. Yeah, I think that just builds a bridge to the past for kids, right? I mean, as they get older, certainly they know they have grandparents and great grandparents. They know there's these people that lived a long time ago, but they don't know them. So I think this sort of builds a connection, builds a bridge to them, especially as you can um, spark their imagination, I guess, and if you're fortunate enough to be able to find these people and find the stores, it's even greater. But even if you can't, you can sort of take some liberties maybe with history and know that it's likely, use that kind of word, that your fourth great grandfather was a farmer. Most everybody was, and you can help them. I kind of appreciate more the past rather than just look at them as these figures unknown, I guess, if that makes sense. So on their level, right, trying to immerse them in historical context is, I guess I'm trying to say it at their level to help them learn.
I know Kathy asked some kind of quirky questions, obviously, hence the title. How did you narrow down what questions you thought kids might naturally want to ask their ancestors?
Right. Well, listening to my grandkids, they certainly ask a lot of odd questions. But my wife was really helpful with that because after teaching first grade and kindergarten for 30 years, that's all she heard all day long was quirky questions. So I would take a first pass at things, and then she'd go, "That's not a very good question. How about let's try this instead?" So she was very helpful. For example. One of the first questions in the setting, they're in the attic. Kathy and her grandpa, they're in the attic, and they're just looking through old boxes. And he goes, "Wow, these boxes contain a lot of history about our ancestors." Here comes the first quirky question. "Grandpa, what's an antster?" Because she didn't know what the word ancestor meant. So my first cut at it was, who are our ancestors? And my wife goes, no, let's make the question quirky. What's an antster? Because she never. So he says, no, ancestor, and then he had to explain, like, I'm your ancestors. My parents were your ancestors. So we just my wife really took credit for most of that because she's kind of listened to that as a first grade school teacher all the years. And so we brainstormed a little bit back and forth on those. But some we'd heard from our grandkids, and then others she'd heard, certainly as a teacher all those years.
What do you hope, the book's only been out a little while, but what do you hope children and their families can take away after reading the book and completing a family history journal? What are you really hoping? What's your biggest hope for those families?
Well, it's just that kids will have an appreciation of their past, and that it really helps them understand who they are and why they're here, and gives them an appreciation of what it took for them to be here. Their kids are special because look at all the thousands and thousands of years of ancestors that are overcomers and survivors that had to survive for them to get here today, and for kids to have an appreciation for that and really understand, who they are and where they came from, and that was really it to spark that interest at a young age because, again, I started in my 30s or 40s on this journey, and wow, imagine starting at a young age interested in this, what you could learn. So that's really, I guess, the goal in this is to, as a children's book, spark that interest and let the kids engage with parents and grandparents and then go on that journey together.
If our listeners are interested in purchasing the book and the journal, where can they go about finding it?
Yeah, so I'm on Amazon, so they can certainly go on Amazon and search for my name, Dale Spaulding. Spaulding with a U, so Spaulding, or search for Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions on Amazon, or I have a website, dalespaulding.com. And up at the top, I have a drop down for children's books, so they can click there as well, which takes them to Amazon. Okay. But either one of those, dalespaulding.com, or just search on Amazon.
Well, Dale, thank you so much for joining me today for the OGS Ohio Roots podcast. I really hope our listeners kind of reach out and pick up the book. I know it's as a genealogy organization, one of their biggest challenges is reaching younger audiences. Right. And a book like this really certainly helps us figure out some best methods for doing that. So thanks so much for being here, Dale, and thanks for your work.
Okay.
And thank Nancy too.
Yes, I will. I'll do that. And I appreciate what you guys too for the state of Ohio and really nationally. I appreciate you guys a lot. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk today.
It's our pleasure. Thanks, Dale. I want to thank Dale Spaulding for joining us today and reminding us that family history often begins with the simple questions of children. If you're looking for a meaningful way to introduce children to their roots, be sure to check out their book, Curious Kathy's Quirky Questions, and My Family History Journal. Thanks for listening to the OGS Ohio Roots podcast, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Mill Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.